Do Christian Science healing practices violate professional ethics? I'm Brooklyn, and this is what we're going to talk about today. What is Christian Science? Well, it was founded in 1879 based on the idea that all reality is spiritual. The whole concept is that God and His Word are what will save you. Nothing worldly will help. If you are ill, then God will want to heal you. If you have repented and you are clean, then you will be saved. It's all based on God and nothing to do with anything worldly. It was so extreme that it wasn't even the concept mind over body, but spirituality over mind and body. If it's God's will, then it will happen. And if it's not God's will, it won't happen. There can be no help from the world or outside parties. Okay, so what is Christian Science healing? Well, Christian scientists understand that healing and their healing method is based solely on the healing power of God and not of any human mind. Now, Christian Science treatments rely on the regenerative power of the Spirit, God, and the Holy Bible. The Christian approach to healing of a disease is through God. Now, the Christian Science healing doctors would perform rituals, read scriptures, and pray. There was no medicine, no equipment, or nurses or doctors. Only God and the healing doctor and the patient. Now, so how does Christian Science healing violate professional ethics? Well, we're going to talk about a couple things today. There are some key issues that we got to talk about. We'll cover these. We'll go over in a little bit more detail, and we'll come back. Now, informed consent, defined in the dictionary, is permission granted in the knowledge of the possible consequences, typically that are given which are given by a patient to a doctor for treatment with full knowledge of the possible risks and benefits. So every patient and every doctor is fully informed of the whole situation at hand, informed of all the possibilities and outcomes of the procedure or service being given. It is completely transparent. Now, autonomy in the dictionary is defined as the capacity of an agent to act in accordance with objective morality rather than under the influence of desires, which means that every person has the right to choose for themselves when they have the mental capacity to. So it's a little bit harder for a person to use the principle of autonomy when they're in a coma or when they have dementia or when they're somehow mentally not fully there because they don't have the capacity to choose for themselves in their right mind. But first, let's explain how doctors tried to lie to the patients. The Christian doctors lied to the patients because they only share a certain amount of evidence and not all of it. So there are two types of evidence shared with patients: anecdotal and base rate. Now, anecdotal is information that's only shared partially. So you only share only the good parts, and you don't let anyone know that, there might actually be something awful about it or that it might not work. It's only positive, and base rate is all of the information. It's completely transparent. So the anecdotal fallacy, defined as the use of anecdotal evidence or isolated examples that rely on personal testimonies to support a refute claim. An example of this is my grandfather was a heavy smoker most of his life, but he lived to be 90 years old. Therefore, smoking is not harmful to people. Now, I don't know if this was real or not, but oh my goodness, this is correct. Or not correct. It is just so incorrect. Anecdotal evidence is only showing or telling the patients about the good and positive outcomes of their practice, as if there were no flaws in their system whatsoever. Another example of this would be a Christian healing doctor that had, let's say, 20 patients, and 19 of them all of them had a fever, and 19 of them died, but one stayed alive because of his spiritual healing. Then, he would only tell the patient, the next one with a fever, that they'll be saved because it's happened before, and if they're righteous, it'll work, and if it's God's will, and nothing else can save them. Because the Lord, Christian Science says yes, because it's happened before, even though they don't tell them, only one person was saved. Now, base rate evidence is the exact opposite. It's all the information. It's the good and the bad. It's completely unbiased, and it's all laid out. The information doesn't, even the information that doesn't support the idea or the concept is also good to know, because that matters when you get the full spectrum. You don't want to lie to a patient and tell them, one thing, but then they could have, tried something else and lived, but in the end they died. It can influence all of their choices. So, how do these things, change people's informed consent and autonomy? Well, informed consent is essential, and Christian Science doesn't disclose most things patients need to know. There's an issue with the system of informed consent with Christian Science, or at least before it was, back in the day, it was awful. Doctors were giving patients false information and not the whole picture or all the information. And there's there's aspects of this that need to be explained to the patient, because it's not fair to the patient when they don't know all the information. So as you can see, as this picture, it has 5 aspects of informed consent. So there's the risks and the benefits, the opportunity for questions, alternatives, and the nature of the treatment. Now, the nature of the treatment might be to save the patient. And the alternative might be, why, if I am a Christian healer, I'm going to want to make sure that everyone knows that I did the right thing and that only God can save them. Therefore, everyone must believe in God. But, the nature of the treatment is to help the patient. But without informed consent and without the base rate information, you're not telling them all the risks. You're not also, you might be telling them some of the benefits. I don't know if you're telling them all of the benefits, but that does influence it. And it doesn't give an opportunity for questions if you're only telling them the good things, because they won't have questions, because they won't seem skeptical, because it's too good to be true. It's the right thing to do because it's Christian Science, and therefore it's not really ethical, because you're not helping the patient. And the fact that you're not even helping their mind, you're helping their spirituality, is also awful, because, those are entirely different things. Now, autonomy is essential for patients to have and feel, because it's their body and no one else's. So on the graphic on the left, it's between patient autonomy and medical knowledge. Now, let's say you have a patient who, again, has a fever. Now, there are medical things that medical professionals know and want to help with, but the patient has autonomy to choose between spiritual and medical, or both, but most likely just one. Now, if you don't give them all of the information, once again, if you don't give them all of the information, they won't know what to choose for themselves. They won't know exactly what they want and what they need, because they don't know the whole picture. But autonomy is influenced and manipulated through not having base rate information. By not giving the patients the right information, they were essentially taking a part of their autonomy. The patients could still choose, but they could choose whatever they wanted, but not with the right mentality. Anecdotal information does not disclose all the information that base rate does. And it's doing a disservice to not only the patients, but also the healer, because they're seeing a lot of grief and a lot of pain, because they aren't realizing, or if they are realizing that they're lying, they don't care. So the graphic on the right shows, and this is how I interpreted it, that informed consent and base rate information helps autonomy, because it cuts the strings of the liars, so the liars can't, puppet around patients. I think that's a really cool graphic. Anyway, in conclusion, Christian Science healing practices do violate professional ethics. Is it ethical to try and give someone hope that a treatment will work, even though just because it's happened for another patient, even though the information might not be accurate? Or should all the possibilities be put on the table so that patients know what could really happen in all aspects? Is it ethical to lie and try to benefit someone else? I mean, if there was also medicine combined with Christian healing, I think it would work great. Medicine is used for the body, and the body is what holds your spirituality or your mind. Therefore, you need to align with that. You would need to use medicine with the the information and the healing to then help the whole body. But without the medicine, it doesn't work. So does it violate professional ethics? Yes. Professional ethics in the medical field is all about making sure that everyone is informed and that everyone is making sure that the patient has the best treatment and always kept in mind and first. That's what the Hippocratic Oath is all about. And so it's not fair when a patient has a better chance of living with medicine because they are, dealing with a body issue and not a mind and spirit issue, because they won't get it with Christian healing science. It's violating the Hippocratic Oath, in my opinion. So yes, it is unethical to take someone's right of knowing all the information by covering it up with just the good information and giving them false hope of being better, even though it might not actually work. False information is unethical. So yeah, Christian science healing practices do violate professional ethics. Thank you for listening.